Joining me now, as you can see here, is Michael Cohen. He's the former personal attorney and fixer for Donald Trump. He's the host of the Mea Culpa podcast, on which I have appeared several times. He's the author of the upcoming book, Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the Department of Justice Against His Critics. He was also credited, by the way, by New York Attorney General Letitia James this week for helping kickstart her department's investigation into the Trump organization's fraudulent business practices. No better person to talk to than you about this. Nice to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
In person.
Good to see you.
I just said a whole lot of things there. What stands out to you? What's the thing that you're most thinking about right now?
There's so many investigations, and you wouldn't believe, if this was a television show, you would turn around and say,
the viewers would say this is too complicated.
It's too stupid. Yeah. I can't watch this. It's ridiculous. It can never happen. But it's happening in real time in our lives. Our democracy is in peril because of one man who goes ahead and weaponizes the United States Department of Justice against his critics, against the country. Anybody that's not one of his supporters, he's willing to go after. And he doesn't care if he burns the country down in doing it.
What turned you? I mean, when did the penny drop for you? Because you were in his world for a while. You were not only a supporter, but a very, very key one.
I was at the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
What changed my mind is when I saw Donald Trump on television. He was sitting at the table. It was right after the raid on the hotel that I was staying at. And for the folks that want to turn around and say that I was on the lam, 2 blocks from my primary residence, we had a flood from our neighbor upstairs. And so we moved into the hotel. What ended up happening there is they said to him, can you comment about the raid on? He goes, I can't believe it's disgusting what the FBI did when they raided one of my lawyers. And then I sat there and I shook my head. One of your lawyers? You mean the guy that you call every morning at 4:30 a.m. and then 11:30 at night before you put your head down? One of your lawyers? That's when I knew. You see, let me say this. Donald Trump is not the brightest, not the brightest guy you ever going to meet, as they say, not the sharpest tool in the shed. What ends up happening is the last guy in Donald's ear owns the brain. And everybody that's in his inner circle wants to be that last guy. They want to control Donald for obviously their own personal, their own personal benefit. So what happens with Donald, someone must have, put into his ear, let Michael be the fall guy.
Right.
Let him be the scapegoat. Throw him under the bus.
Yeah.
He loves you. He'll do what's ever needed to protect you, as he's done over the past decade. And for me, no. For me, it was more about making amends for what I had done, but specifically for my wife, my daughter, and my son. And I was not going to be the villain of Donald's story.
Right. So when you hear these things that Letitia James says, it's based on some of the evidence you provided. It's based on some reporting from the New York Times about inflating properties to get a better loan, devaluing. Donald Trump said the other day, he said, I didn't overvalue my properties. I undervalued them. That's also part of the allegation, because you undervalue them for purposes of taxes. Is there anything that come out here that you hadn't seen before? Does this all seem obvious to you?
So I did read the 200-page indictment. I would say the vast majority of those, like maybe 197 or 198, I had provided information and testimony on early on. Remember, the district attorney's office came and visited me 3 times while I was an inmate at Otisville. And so for me, it was her providing me the credit for beginning the investigation is extremely meaningful, and I'm very thankful for her for doing it, because as I'm on this, we'll call it a redemption tour, so to speak, my goal is not just to clear my name, because as you'll see in this upcoming book, Revenge, what I do is I spell out the whole thing. I didn't commit tax evasion. It was a lie. It was rammed down my throat by the prosecutors within 48 hours, or they were going to indict my wife. And I'm married at that time, 25 now, 28 years. I'm not going to let anything happen to her. So I turned around, I read the allocution that they wrote for me, and I followed the script that they wanted. Never believing Judge Pauly was going to give me 36 months. I never believed it, because I never committed tax evasion. HELOC violation, even stupider than the tax. What I did do? Stormy Daniels. That I did do, and I acknowledge it, and I take responsibility for it. Karen McDougal, that was David Pecker and the National Enquirer. So what I do in this book is I lay out how one man weaponized the Justice Department. And it's not my statements in the book. It's statements from judges and prosecutors and lawyers and journalists and you name it. And we provide documents. You know, you understand this. Documentary evidence doesn't lie. Barbara McQuade was on the show earlier. 100% agree with her. The documents are what's going to put Donald in the worst situation that he's ever been in, and that's criminal liability.
What is that? What's the worst situation he's ever been in? Is it that Letitia James is claiming a lot of money, and you think it actually might be more money than the $250 million I talked about that she claims he defrauded the people of New York of? Is it the referral to the IRS, or is it the referral to the Southern District of New York?
Both. Right, it's both. And let's see if the Southern District of New York picks up the case. Let's not forget, they had a dozen sealed indictments based upon my statement that I did it at the direction of and for the benefit of individual number one, who we all know is Donald J. Trump. So they ended up getting rid of those sealed indictments. We don't have a strong enough case. So let's see if the Southern District of New York, that's no longer under his control, will pick up the mantle. IRS, it's an open and shut case. Numbers don't lie. People do. And Donald is one of the biggest liars that you'll ever make or ever meet. So in the indictment, and I say this, what Tish James writes is that the baseline is $250 million. She's not going below that. The amount is substantially greater. And again, as I said on many, many shows, I believe the number to be somewhere between $750 and $1 billion. That will wipe him out. He doesn't have cash.
Doesn't that make it worse because then he's got to run for president?
No, he's not running for president. And, you know, we've had this conversation on my podcast, Mea Culpa, where I've been on every show. He's not going to run. That would stop him from being able to take the money that he's taking from these unwitting supporters that just keep funding him to the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Makes a lot of money off of that. Michael, good to see you, my friend. Thank
you. Really good
to
see you, Ollie.
For a very honest and forthcoming conversation with you. Michael Cohen is the author of the upcoming book, Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the Department of Justice Against His Critics. He's also the author of Disloyal, a memoir, true story of the former personal attorney to President Donald J. Trump.